back, YouTube, to Peterson Auto. Today, again, we're working on the 96 f250 powerstroke diesel. And the fuel pressure regulator, which this is the new fuel bowl. We're replacing this whole assembly. Fuel pressure regulator, right down here, has been epoxied over and is leaking. You have a couple lines to worry about here. And a couple of bolts to worry about. There really ain't much to it. You have a fuel line here, a fuel line here. This goes to your in the valley fuel pump, the low pressure pump. This one goes to, I think it also goes to the fuel pump there. Now this one's the low pressure side and this one's the high pressure side, if I recall. Either way, these two go to the fuel pump and this one's your return. So you only have 3 hoses to disconnect. The bottom one sucks to get to. You really need a long straight head screwdriver. And then over here on the front side of things, you have 2 hoses that connect onto these 2 fittings. You may or may not have a hose coming off of here. The hose coming off of here is your drain valve hose. So mine currently doesn't have one, unfortunately. So we're going to figure out a way to make that work and hook that up. So a little bit of wiring needs disconnected. There's this connector here, which is on the one of the H-pop sensors. I'll show you here in a moment. And when you flip the assembly over, there's a wiring connector on the side of it. Yours may not be on the side any longer. If anyone's rebuilt it, it's probably not on the side any longer. That will need disconnected too. We'll show you where that one's at. Just to give you a general location, you're looking at the engine. I'm standing in front of the engine bay. Right there's your filter. Here's your regulator. Here's these 2 lines. They'll take a 9/16 wrench. Your 2 hoses are in the back and then right over here. I'll try to set up the camera and get you a really good view when I get to each individual part. My wiring connector is currently right here. So I'll disconnect that. It's just kind of tucked in there. Tools, good assortment of straight head screwdrivers, 9/16 wrench. I think it's a 9/16 socket for the 2 bolts that hold the bowl on here. I'll let you know when we get to them. And a long extension and a ratchet. Other than that, it's a fairly simple job. The main thing is drain the fuel and put more fuel in before you start it up again. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on this. Get a good camera set up so you can see what's going on. And hopefully we'll get a decent video for you. Okay, YouTube, the view you're looking at is pretty much from the driver's side of the hood down in. So here's the front of the engine. Here's the turbo back here. Fuel filter, driver's side, passenger side. I know it might be a little confusing, you know, but it is what it is. That's the best place I could mount the camera, unfortunately, with the lighting I had available, and pardon the poor lighting. Here is our connector we have to disconnect. I don't remember how this works. Oh, supposed to be a clip on it. I guess the clip's not there. So I got that disconnected. As I said, I don't have the fuel drain down at the very bottom. So the next thing I'm doing is making the drain happen. Because the hose I have is just a tad too small and such a pain in the rear to do this with. So we're going to go ahead and move on to plan B, as in better do this later. Probably be a ton of fuel in the bottom of the fuel bowl now. In the valley, sorry, the valley. However, I'll deal with that when we get the assembly out. So, first thing I'm going to do is disconnect these lines right here. There's one here and one down back in here. Try to give you a good view of those quick. There we go. So you can see the 2 lines here and down in there that I'm disconnecting. This is a front view again. So I'll disconnect those. Just to let you know, this yellow lever here, you turn it to the drain side of things. from here to here, 90-degree turn, and that'll drain the fuel bowl. I'm not doing that yet. I'm going to try to put some rags in there and suck some of the fuel out and, you know, get it as empty as possible before I have to do that. But right now I'm disconnecting these two hoses. These are your high pressure hoses coming from the cylinder heads. One goes to this head on the driver's side, the other to the passenger side there. Okay, YouTube, you can now see both lines are disconnected. They will leak some fuel. I never label these because the one here you can see makes that big U shape. In factory form it doesn't do that. But when you are putting them back together, you can remember the bottom is the passenger side, the top is the driver's side. You know, or if yours are your one's old as mine, it'll be bent to the point where it's the only logical place to put them. So, you know, take some consideration, be careful, and you'll figure that part out without any real issues there. So, we're going to get you back up on the camera mount here after we explain the next step, which is going to be taking off the filter and getting out as much fuel as we can. Since our drain is not going to work right now, we're going to have to make all the we're going to have to do as much as we can to get the fuel out of the filter housing assembly before we proceed any further. Okay, to get the housing off, you need to rotate this. These things suck. They're kind of hard to do. A little solution I have to take, I usually use a pry bar that's nice and square, but a screwdriver works. Put it between these notches here, push down on it, and turn. You can usually just barely get in there, enough to loosen it up, as you see me doing here. And that'll allow you to remove the filter. You may have some fuel come out when this happens. It's not a big deal. Just gently working it out. If you move it too quickly, it will splash and it will cause a mess. So we're gonna the filter up and let it drain. You're letting the filter drain back into the bowl here. That way you're not taking a filter full of fuel and slinging it around the engine bay. So there's an O-ring here that should stay with the filter lid. And once it's mostly drained out, I said mostly, keep going. There you go. You can take it and just flip it upside down. Take it on out. Alright, now you can see down in here, this is your standoff pipe. You usually need a crow's foot wrench to get to this if you want to take it out. In my case, I have some rags here. I'm going to stuff a couple down in there, absorb up some diesel fuel, and set them aside in a place to dispose of properly. I'm going to throw them in a trash can. Don't tell the EPA that. You should dispose of any automotive fluids properly. Most of your auto parts stores will take used fluids. This fuel, if you really wanted to, you could take a turkey baster, siphon it out with a turkey baster, and put it in your gas tank. I don't have a turkey baster, so this will be my solution. And actually, there's not much in there. I could probably drain that into the valley just as easily, too. Now I have a Blue Scott shop towel here. No, they aren't sponsoring me, I wish. Because then I have a lot more of these things, but they are pretty awesome. And I'm just going to stick it down there and start wicking the fluid up from underneath the element. And hope I can get a decent bit more out. Because the more you get out, the less cleanup you're going to have later. However, there is literally an inch deep pool of fluid from the leak in the bottom of my valley right now. So since it's below the element, I'm going to call that good enough. And flip my drain. And just drain the rest right into the valley because, well, it's already there. Okay, YouTube, now that that's done, you're going to need your long and your short straight head screwdrivers. Short one's easy. Should adjust the frame a little bit. Right down here's your return line clamp, right here. So I'm going to take that off. You can use an 8mm, I think it is also on these in factory form. A lot of the time people replace them with just generic hose clamps. These are specially hose clamps because of the pressure, and especially hose. So if you do try to rebuild your own because you have a leak, I wouldn't recommend going with the generic kind. I hear gurgling in there. Maybe air venting back to the return side of the system. Just realized that is the clamp I took out. So this is for your return hose. Get the clamp nice and loose. You want to get it to the point where it'll easily slide down past the little bulge for the barb. And that little like bulge there that keeps it in place on the end of the metal tube. Once you have it loose enough that it'll slide down past that, that'll pull out with ease. For a long screwdriver here, we're going to have to get down into the bottom here. I'm going to get this taken apart, and I'll probably give you a good shot of it after I get it loosened up. Once I find it. There we go. This is between the in-valley fuel pump and your fuel bowl assembly. Unfortunately, I don't think I have enough light down there. Well, that helps now. Another thing is on top of the fuel lines, there's this little metal cover on the fuel lines going to the pump. You just take this cover off, it just literally pops right off, just a little clip holds it on. This bottom one is the hardest to get to, and it takes a little bit of skill sometimes, especially once it gets loose, because the clamp will move around on you. But a long screwdriver works well. I've done them previously with an 8mm and like 14 inches of extensions, and once it gets loose to the point where it gets annoying, you can reach around the backside of the intake Y pipe there and hold it in place so your screwdriver doesn't allow it to turn. But this is getting pretty loose here, and I may be good without reaching down there. Where are we at? There we go. See that one on the bottom? That's what you're going for. it is going into the fuel pump. We'll show you a little better picture of that. That's the one you're going for. That one on top is the next one we're gonna go ahead and undo. And then we have two bolts. You can see right there. And underneath that wiring harness, if I move it aside, hopefully you can see it. There you go, kind of, right there. Those two bolts come out. That's our next step after loosening the hose clamps. And you can actually pull the assembly out at that point. So I'm going to get my other hose clamp off back here. Remember, we already took the return clamp off. That'll make our day a little easier. Usually the first couple turns are pretty hard on these because you do want to snug them up pretty good. However, after a few turns, they loosen up and get a lot easier. So don't strip it, put some pressure on it and you'll be fine. If you strip it out, you're getting new clamps. You know, as everyone's probably figured out, I like to give props where props are due. My return lines were just done on this actually. Oh, my fuel hoses, we'll call them actually. So I did the return line and two fuel pump lines very recently actually. So that being said, they've been recently done. I got them from dieselorings.com. I buy all of them, all my return lines and that from there. They have good quality products. They have upgraded hoses, the floral stir something, I don't know. It's floral, like fluorescent, and then some fancy technical jargon. They work great. That's really what you need to know. They work great and they're awesome. So, you know, dieselorings.com, that's where I get my O-rings for all these. So now we have one more connector. It is way down here. Probably have to show you this one once everything's out. Let's see what we can do. If you look down here, see right down in there, you see the clip right here. It's kind of dirty and nasty. The clip, the metal clip comes up and then it just slides right out. I may need a little more room to do that. I don't know. Nope, there we go. It just slides right out. That's one of your high pressure oil sensors that goes into the HPOP. The harness just happens to run through the harness with the fuel bowl. So you got to disconnect that one before you take it the whole way out. So just to show you that connector that I just mentioned up close and personal, here it is. See the little tuning clip will clip down onto the sensor itself and hold it in. Once you do undo the retaining clip, this just slides right out. So just to give you a little better up close and personal view of this so you know what you're looking at, because they're usually covered in oil, dirt, grease, and fuel. Okay, YouTube, now we're going to take these bolts out. It's actually a 1/2 inch. I have the socket on a long extension. I'm going to go ahead and make sure we're loosening, which looks like we are. Yes. And just loosen the bolts. A magnet does kind of help here if you want to pull the bolts out ahead of time. Me, I usually don't care. And I just pull the bolts out with the assembly, or if they come out on the ratchet, they come out on the ratchet. You know, no big deal if they don't. See, that one had enough grease and gunk on it, it came out with the ratchet. This side you have to move the wiring aside to get down there. There, we got real lucky. It came out without having to reach in and grab it. Okay, YouTube, this is where a small pry bar or something will come in handy.
Got to pull, jiggle, and wiggle the assembly up. And usually in that process, the hoses don't want to come out very well. They are a pretty tight fit on there. So I'll take a little pry bar and get in here and just give a little bit of separation to the hoses and push them back. Yeah, this one will slide over. I'll adjust that a little bit more afterwards, probably. There we go. So I'll pull some tension and then pry back out a couple times just to get that hose wanting to move. And then a little jiggling, prying, and wedging later, you'll have it out. Hindsight, I probably should have done this return hose first, but you can still get it off from here. Do want to be careful you're not going to kink the return line in the process, though, of getting that return hose off. So prop it up with a decent bit of tension, but not too much, and a little bit of prying will get her to come right off. Don't damage the hose, just push around the edges, a little pry, a little wiggle, a little jiggle, and she'll eventually come. There we go. Now our assembly comes on out with all of its issues. And the wiring does not hold up and falls on the floor. That's not actually how I planned that, YouTube. Now you can see all the fuel down here in the valley. There's some back behind underneath the turbo also. So we're going to jam some rags and towels down there and get all of that out. Which unfortunately is actually harder than it sounds. Diesel fuel has an ignition temperature under compression somewhere around 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Diesel fuel laying in your valley will hit its flash point about 250 degrees Fahrenheit very easily and very quickly. However, the good news for you is it won't catch fire in your valley in most cases. Don't hold me liable if you screw this up, it leaks fuel, and it catches fire. Most of the time it's not going to catch fire, but it will usually smoke. So if you do make a mistake or you have the leak, I've had a leak a few times and actually driven it to where I need to get it to fix the leak. I wouldn't drive it, cross country or anything like that. But wherever you got to go to fix your leak, usually ain't bad. I pulled it from my driveway across the street up to my neighbor's driveway, well, into my neighbor's garage here, to make this fix. And my leak was pretty bad, and it leaked pretty much everything you're seeing here out. So assembly. There's a hose that still remained on there at the bottom. I gotta transfer that over to the new one quick. Okay, you can see the hose here at the bottom. It's been transferred over to the new assembly. I put the clamp in a way that's accessible when it is off the vehicle. Unfortunately, you will not get to this clamp on the vehicle, so this bottom hose has to go onto the assembly before it goes in. Tighten this clamp up good. You want to have the clamp below the level of the barb, the little nub that sticks out, like you can see right here. You can see that little nub? You want the end of the clamp below that level, so you want to feel it and feel it's higher. Kind of see it in the picture here. It's a little bulged here, and it's bulged out further than this clamp is. Now you got to put it back in. It's always a ton of fun. I like to route the wire around the return there. This gives you a little better access to your bolt. Fortunately, it does have to go below everything. And the first thing you're going to put in is your return. So get that in there nice and good. Your return probably bent up a bit when you put it in. And we are forgetting something, YouTube. We are forgetting that little tiny hose. So I forgot the hose for the drain again. That one actually makes it a little bit more challenging to get the assembly in with. But we have one end that should be slightly bigger in this case because it was already on something, because I robbed this off of something else. So we're going to put that end onto here. Line up your drain hose the best you can. There we go. That's going to at least get it started on there to make my day a tad bit easier. There we go. So now I have my drain hose on there started. At least it's going to guide fluid out if there's a little leakage. I'm not too concerned. You want to line up your bottom hose now, which I think is the one you can see. No, you can't see the bottom hose. Okay. Line up your bottom hose. Start sliding it on. Pull your wiring aside. And maneuver it so your top hose will line up. Unfortunately, that does take some creative acrobatics in some cases. Once you have them both barely lined up on there, jiggle it just a bit to get the return lined up. If you haven't done it yet, the return sometimes goes right in place. Other times you have to jiggle, wiggle, and move. And then just gently wiggle and push. Wiggle and push until everything's lined up. Once it's all lined up well, take your harness, stuff your harness back down in, out of the way. So now your harness is out of the way, and you have your hose clamps in. You can move your hose clamps into place. And then you can put your bolts back in. We have the bolt here and here that we took out, if you recall. Hopefully for you, your bolts are all cruded up like mine and they stick into the socket. So you can just drop them in. Careful when lining these up. You don't want to strip the threads at all or anything. If you feel any real resistance putting these in, pull the bolt out and double check to make sure it's not crooked or cross threading there. The other thing to remember is they don't take much torque. You know, so just make them to the point where nothing's going to move and you'll be fine. Fortunately, I couldn't give you a better view there. There's bolt 1, there's bolt 2, and hopefully you can see the blue hose right there at the bottom. And the other blue hose is currently underneath here somewhere. Oh, there you go, actually. There you can see both hose clamps. So we got to move the hose clamps into place and tighten the hose clamps up. You have the bottom one, which is by the fuel pump. There's the pump, by the way. A little better view of actual hoses. The clamp on your left there is going to be moved a little bit because I'm not happy with its placement, even though the barb is actually out from there. I think moving it back a little bit would be a good idea. And then we have the return clamp right here, which needs to move up and into place and then can be clamped down. So we're going to get those all clamped down and ready to go. Okay, so to tighten things up, I'm going to actually get out the 8mm and extensions. I do have to go and get myself down in there first and get everything arranged into the proper location, which will sometimes take a big screwdriver or pry bar just to move things around. Unfortunately, as I've said previously, there isn't much room to work, so you know, stick-like objects will be your friend doing this job. Okay, YouTube, I have scientifically determined that will be a 9/30 seconds socket that goes on this. So now you know it's 9/30 seconds. Now this is a kind of rare one. 7mm may be very similar or something like that. Or you can just use your straight head screwdriver, long handle. For putting these on, I kind of like the socket, just because of the horrible access you have to a lot of these. So I'm just spinning it by hand until it gets tight, and we'll put our ratchet on. And actually tighten it up with the ratchet. Like I said, the bottom one is the worst offender and the hardest to reach. Get it nice and tight. Once it's so snug, you can pull your holding device out and just keep going. Okay, YouTube, now all my clamps are on. We can move back up to connecting our high pressure hoses. We have that one and this one. 9/16 wrench will do it. If you're using a open end box end like you saw me earlier, I would say it's a good idea to be prepared to spend a little time on the back one, as you have to flip the wrench each and every turn. When the hose starts to turn, that means the swivel part of it is seated, and you're not going to have any issues there. Or it can sometimes get really tight, and then you know it's tight. Now we need to connect our electrical connector. It looks like the big part of the connector is gonna go towards the bowl there. This is all kinds of weird shapes. Put it back on. The big part though, the wider end, see how there's wide and narrow? The wider end is gonna go towards the bowl, just in case you forget that or whatnot. Okay, there we go. Now we have our high pressure hoses hooked up. We have a return hooked up and tightened. We have both the fuel pump hoses hooked up and tightened. So we're good to go. The assembly is in. We now need to go ahead and take this new cap off. And we'll do that the same way as we did the last one. Put the screwdriver in and gently twist. However, this one's being a lot more stubborn. May need a little bigger screwdriver for more leverage. Okay, bigger leverage right here. Let's see what we can do. We'll have to move this out of our way. And sometimes they just suck to get started. No matter what you do, sometimes they just suck. So we're going to try and get it to go. There we go. So after you get that first little bit done, usually don't take much. I think Ford assembles these dry, so that would be why it's a little tough to get off. But now we have it out. There you go. Look, a new fuel heater too. We'll see how that helps with cold starts. Okay, YouTube, I've rigged up my OSHA approved fuel transfer device, a soda can, because my fuel can does not have a spout on it. So start pouring fuel in. Make sure you have it in, make sure you have the drain in the closed position. There we go. I'm going to do this a couple more times. Get it a little bit above the heater element there. And then put the filter in. Okay, there we go. You can see the fuel level. I'm going to go ahead and put the filter element in and see where that comes to. Obviously not that high yet. You can kind of see on the filter element it came right up to about here. So we're going to put one more can in and see what happens there. Okay, more of the OSHA approved fuel transfer device. Now I'm about halfway full without the filter in. It gets pretty close. You have to push the filter down and give it time to seep through. Just how they happen to work. So I'm going to let the filter out just a little bit. Put one more half a can in. Doesn't need to be perfectly full, but right there you can see we're getting pretty close. Okay, now we have our lid with the gasket here. Actually, it looks like it is lubed already, so that's good. It does actually say install slowly on it, but there's already lube on it. The little clips here go onto the little clips on the filter, so just line those up. You need to go. I'd pull the filter out just a tad. Line those up. Put your filter back in. And screw everything down. You can do these hand tight, but get them good and tight. You know, get them tight as you can by hand. Fortunately, that's going to be the end of our video here. The last step is to start it up and check for leaks. I don't want my new video camera sitting right here when I do this, so unfortunately you don't get to see that part of it. I'm going to start it up, check for leaks, make sure there's no leaks, everything's all good, and then I'm good to drive away. Your whole setup is done. A couple of little quick comments. The system will prime itself. It just takes forever, and I would recommend having a good battery charger around when you do it. Hook it up to start with, put it on like a 60 amp fast charge and start cranking away. Crank, 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 crank. Usually takes about 5 minutes of cranking. You know, give it 30 seconds of cranking max, and then wait a minute or two. 30 seconds, wait 5 minutes, something like that, you know. Because that's going to go ahead and get everything to the point where you're not going to kill the starter by cranking it too much. There's a cover that mounts to these three. You see two of them here. You see one of them. Here's one, here's two, and three pieces that it's just a little like thumb screw that comes off. They're easy to deal with, so I don't run them on anything, any of my Power Strokes. I take them off. You would have to put that back on if you want it to look pretty under the hood. I don't care about looks. I care about seeing leaks. So that's why I run them that way. But yeah, so it will prime itself, but putting fuel in the housing will help it. When you do start it, it will sputter a bit. So once you get it to fire, go ahead and give it a little bit of fuel. Keep it around 1500, 2000 RPMs until it runs smooth and idle smooth. Once it idles smooth, then you're good to go to drive off. So thank you for watching. Hope you like the install of the new fuel bowl in a 96 Power Stroke. I will probably do a video on how to rebuild it then at one point in time to give you the tips and tricks there if you're going to take yours apart and rebuild it. However, that's not going to happen now. I will have to go ahead and, you know, acquire some more stuff for that. But for now, you know how to take it out and put it back together. If you go to dieselorings.com and order their kit, they do have they have an instruction link or even a video now. I think they might even have a video now. They do have a link that comes in the kit that's to their website that has full instructions on every last little detail. And you have a packet of O-rings that you look at and you go, wow, this is going to suck. And then there's an instruction sheet that actually comes with it that's scaled proportionately, well, actually scaled 1-to-1. So the picture of the O-rings, the exact size of the O-ring, makes it almost idiot-proof to match them up, to be honest with you. Makes it really, really simple. So dieselorings.com if you're going to rebuild your fuel bowl. And then watch my video here and we'll show you how to take it in and out. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe to Peterson Auto.